Hey guys, so this is going to be my Poison Burst Arrow Deadeye. And yes, you saw the thumbnail or the title correctly. This character is using the Cultist bow, which in my opinion, and probably not an opinion at all, the least popular bow in Path of Exile 2. And I know this because whenever I tried to look for the bow for this character, it was a goddamn nightmare. And I still don't have a very good bow right now, and I hope to be able to find one soon. But we'll go into that in a little bit when we go over the gear. But I made this character because, first of all, I wanted to play a poison character and I wanted to use a less popular poison ability, which in my opinion, Poison Burst Arrow is probably the least popular poison ability in the game right now, because every time I try to look for a build on YouTube on Poison Burst Arrow, it's all just gas arrow builds, no poison burst. Or like I looked at Moxie's video and it was like, oh, I used to do poison burst, but I swapped gas arrow because it's better. So we are playing a poison burst arrow with really the main goal of this build is to make it kind of like a mini lightning arrow herald build. And we try to do that, and we're still trying to do that, and we're not really getting there yet, but we'll go into that a little bit. So this is the goal of the character. And as a result, Gas Arrow just doesn't work very well, because Gas Arrow has a limitation that this bow build, this skill just doesn't, which is the ability to shoot the arrow off screen. Gas Arrow explodes on the ground and it has to be on the screen. So if you want to shoot anything off screen, it can't do it. So this is why we went with Poison Burst Arrow instead of Gas Arrow. Now, let's take a look at my character right now. So my character is currently at level 89 Deadeye. We have very low survivability, 1.5k life, 2.1k energy shield. We have 1k mana, 135 spirit, basically no armor. We have 73% evasion, very, very low. And we're not capped out on resist yet. Well, we could have been. I had a previous necklace that could have capped us out, but it was like corrupted when I bought it, so I couldn't anoint anything onto it. So I took that off, and now we're running with low lightning resist, which is fine. This character wasn't meant to be anything survivable. Like, it's meant to go clear maps quickly, and if it dies, right? That's kind of how it goes with these types of characters. But this is my current character, and we are at 238 dexterity and 301 intelligence. Now, the reason why we're scaling so high intelligence is because we are going to be using Hoa on this character. So that's kind of how we are scaling this character. We are scaling this character through elemental damage. So the 1 to 10 lightning damage for attacks for 10 intelligence, which means that we need a lot of intelligence. And then on top of that, because we are using a poison build, we actually need to convert our poisons or our lightning damage and our elemental damage into poison, which is why we use the original Sin Ring. This makes it so that all of our elemental damage is converted into chaos damage. So combining this and this gives us a ton of damage. Now, we also have our Cultist bow here, which is mostly elemental damage, so no physical damage, because the bow itself doesn't give physical damage. So we don't have like the best bow out there in terms of elemental damage. There's some that are better, but they're way more expensive, and in my opinion, not that great. And there's one thing that we're looking for right now on this build, which is the +1 arrows to our bow attacks. And there are just none on the trade website that have the stats that we're looking for right now. So that's kind of why we don't really have a great bow right now. But we'll go more into detail into the equipment in just a little bit. Here are the gems that we are using. For Poison Burst Arrow, we're currently rocking a 4-link with Chaos Infusion, because we don't do any physical damage. As you can see on the tooltip, it's like basically non-existent. Chaos Infusion is very, very good because we just do all chaos damage, as you can see here. So this adds us gives a ton of DPS. We're using Comorbidity, we're using Ambush, and we're using Deadly Poisons. Now, the reason why we're using this setup right now is there's a very specific reason why. So first off, we're a crit build, right? So right now we are rocking about 48% crit chance on our bow, our Poison Burst Arrow, and I wanted to basically crit 100% of the chance if I can. So I'm using Ambush for clear, because in terms of damage, it's pretty respectable for tier 15 maps, and being able to just crit on the first hit is very, very helpful in helping us with our clear. So we're doing that, and we're trying to get our crit chance as close as possible to 50%. That way we can get 100% crit when we're hitting enemies. Now, we also use deadly poisons because the way that we're spreading and doing a lot of AoE is through Herald of Plague, which if you read the description, it says it spreads the most damaging poison on enemies you kill in a 1.8 meter radius. So if I make my poisons more damaging, higher magnitude, that will spread better and do more damage. Of course, for single target, this doesn't do very well, but for AoE and clear, this helps a lot. Now, we're also using comorbidity because honestly, I just can't really find another thing better that increases our damage for clear than this. Unfortunately, it doesn't really spread. The +1 toxins doesn't really spread with Herald of Plague, the extra stacks. So that's kind of unfortunate. But I've just found that this helps with the clear a lot better. We might get rid of it in the future. We'll see. And, honestly, these gems are very much subject to change. That's what we're going with right now. Vine Arrow, we are using Swift Affliction, Lightning Infusion, Conduction, and Martial Tempo. Now, Vine Arrow really is for single target. This build is not very good at single target, and I don't think it'll ever be very good at single target. But we're using Vine Arrow just to bolster that a little bit. That way we can at least kill the bosses in our maps somewhat decently. So whenever there's a boss, we drop our Vine Arrows, and hopefully, it shocks with the Lightning Infusion and Conduction, and then makes it so that we can shock the boss and kill it with, easier. Now, you might be wondering, how are you doing lightning damage with the original Sin? Well, when you do added lightning damage or added X damage, right? Added lightning damage, added cold damage, added fire damage, you're actually still able to do the lightning damage. As you can see in our tooltip, you will see that we do actually do lightning damage on our ability. If we take this off, it'll do none, right? So that's an interaction that, goes through the original Sin ring. Now, we also have Eye of Winter because we are a chaos damage build, poison build. Eye of Winter will be adding Withering Touch to the enemy, so it'll be withering it. We combine that with Extraction to make that work. Then we just have Unleash. Very, very simple Eye of Winter kind of setup. It also gives us critical weakness, which increases our crit chance. So against single target again, just better. We're also using Despair, which has Heightened Cursed, Persistence, and Magnified Effect to just be better. And then we are running Wind Dancer, Grim Feast, and Ghost Dance for our spirit gems. Now, we all know Wind Dancer, Ghost Dance basically very much synergizes one another. Gives me more avoidability, gives me more evasion, and then whenever we get hit, this will heal us. And then Grim Feast just help us get more life because this is a very squishy build. You also see right here we have Flame Wall, and this is just some of the ways that I'm just thinking about how can I increase the amount of single target damage this build does, because it really does pretty dang low single target. It's not very good at it. Again, it'll do tier 15 bosses relatively well, but it's really, like, compared to most builds, very, very slow. It really is just for speed clearing and farming through maps. So those are our skill gems. And then for our tree, we are currently starting, of course, here with Pathfinder or Deadeye. We do not have our 4th Ascendant yet, even though we are almost level 90, because again, killing bosses is really tough. So I'm still trying to figure that out. And when we do, we'll probably go into here, skill speed and less damage taken per Tailwind stack, which at the end of the day, it's really not even that much, right? Like, this doesn't give us all that much. So that's why I'm not really too stressed about it, but eventually we'll try to get it. So we did not go down the projectile damage route because this build is very much, in need of a lot of points on the tree, because we path all the way from here all the way up here to grab this int node and this energy shield node, just to give us more survivability. We also wanted to grab some of these chaos damage nodes as well to give us more chaos damage, because we are doing the majority of our damage in chaos damage due to original Sin. So this is our current tree right now. We did not level with this tree, by the way. I will probably post a leveling build on my max roll / POB, but honestly, it's just any poison leveling build. You don't really need to do anything special. So we go down here, we grab some magnitude, because with Herald of Plague, magnitude is important. even though we're not really, we're doing crits, right? Which does a lot of damage, which should increase the magnitude, but magnitude important. So we just grab some of that. We get the quiver nodes right here. And here we have a controlled metamorphosis diamond, which allows us to take the stuff in between these two rings without being attached to them. This area is very, very good. I have a medium to large ring on this one, and it hits basically everything that we want. So we get this dex node to get more stats for our skills, right? Our requirements. We can get Falcon Technique for more attack speed, for dexterity. We can get Bestial Skin for more evasion rating from our body armor, which eventually I would like to go Queen of the Forest, but I don't know if that's going to be possible right now. It's looking pretty rough. We also grab this Lasting Toxins to increase duration, because that does more damage, as you know, like not DPS, but just makes my poison do more damage. We did not take Stacking Toxins because it reduces the magnitude of the poison we inflict. And for the most part, we're doing enough damage to kill off the initial hit, and everything else is just spreading, right? So the +1 poison doesn't spread from Herald of Plague. All this does is reduce the amount of damage we're doing in clear. So we didn't take that. We also took this one, Escape Velocity, more movement speed, more evasion rating. And we took this right here as well, Maiming Strike, more damage. So that's what we have here. This cost me about 1 to do, I think maybe 1 or 2 div, 2 div, I think, because that's low minus all elemental resistances. So we bought that. It has high chaos minus chaos resistance, because eventually we're going to be taking, hopefully, CI. So that's why that's the situation there. We path up here to grab this node right here. And then we just basically try to grab as many crit nodes as possible on the tree. We also have a Time Lost Sapphire here, which wasn't very expensive. It was like 10 exalts or something like that. I might try to make it be a little bit better eventually by getting crit damage on it. But for now, we just have Energy Shield crit chance on here, were the main two things we were looking for, because this area has a lot of nodes that we're taking, right? They have 4 notables here, which gives us 7 times 4, 24, what is it called? 24% crit chance, which is very, very nice. And then we also get a bunch of Energy Shield from all these nodes. So this is just overall a very, very valuable time lost jewel. You can get it very, very cheap. Yeah, that's basically our tree. We didn't take these chaos skills because what I found is that Poison Burst Arrow doesn't scale all that well with levels, and it just makes it feel like I'm spending a lot of mana. So, you know, maybe eventually we'll try to find a way to take these, but we're just so strapped on skill points that it's very, very hard to take it. It just doesn't give as much damage as some of these other ones. So yeah, that's the tree right now. It'll probably evolve over time, but that's where we've gotten it so far. In terms of our gear, we have our cultist bow, right? As I showed earlier, lots of elemental damage, because all that elemental damage gets converted to chaos damage. Of course, our Hoa, corrupted to get 2 slots. We have our helmet, nothing very special, just for resistances and energy shield. Our chest armor, which eventually I would like to change this to Queen of the Forest, but we'll see if that's possible right now, because res is looking really rough, survivability looking really rough. We're probably going to have to spend a lot more money to make this build better. Belt, just for resistances. Boots, for movement speed, resistances. We need to get a better one. And then breach ring for stats. I might eventually try to get a different breach ring. We'll see. But this helps us out a lot with the stat requirements for this build. And then we have an amulet that we are allocating for our Anoint Leeching Toxins, which is this one right here, which gives us 30% increased magnitude and recovering life whenever we kill the poisoned enemy. I don't know if this is really the best one, but it seemed pretty useful so far, so that's why I put it into it. But yeah, for this we're using, you know, getting crit chance, crit damage on it. And then for our quiver, this was also just something I bought along the way for crit chance, crit damage, projectile speed, because that gets scaled, increasing our damage with bows, and you know, that's basically what we're looking for, right? I'm thinking about maybe seeing what it would look like if I made this a full elemental, like a damage bow or a quiver, and seeing whether or not that increases our damage or decreases our damage. We'll kind of see that and see if it makes a difference. Still, again, experimenting and seeing how things go. But that is our gear. And in terms of the amount that I spent on this gear, this was just a random hand-me-down from another character. This was like, what, 50 Chaos or Exalt or something like that. Hoa, I found this. I think this is like 6 div because it has the extra slot on it. You don't need that. So this is probably the cheapest one you could probably find on the market is like less than 100k Exalt or something like that. Or maybe it's like 100 or something Exalts, I think, is at the moment. It's not very expensive. Original Sin was a more expensive one. This, I think, was 3 Divine. You don't have to run this if you don't want to, but, you know, if you're going to run the Cultist Bow setup, you definitely need it. And then, all in all, I'd say, like, weapon was, like, 50 Exalts or something like that. So, all in all, I'd say my gear, this was 1 Divine, this was 3 Divine, so 4 Divine. And you get this for less than a Divine again. So let's just say 4.5 Divine, right? And then this Metamorphosis Jewel can be bought for like 1 Divine or less. But this one just has the nicer elemental resistances. So about 6.5 Divines. And then we'll just add an extra 2 Divine for the rest of the gear, right? So 8.5 Divine for this character. Clearing 15 tier 15 maps pretty dang well. And all in all, pretty fun. So that's the build itself. Now, I did want to go over something specific about Gas Arrow. There's a lot of misunderstanding about how Gas Arrow works when it comes to critting. And that's one of the questions people ask me, right? It's like, why don't you go Gas Arrow? And as I explained earlier, it's just not the way I want to build the build. But also when it comes to like crits, Gas Arrow actually can't crit. Well, sort of. So when you take Gas Arrow, it says that it does damage as though it hits, right? And yes, this skill can hit enemies. But the problem is, if you want to crit on Gas Arrow, you actually need to hit the enemy in order to crit. If you don't hit the enemy and you're just trying to rely on the Poison Cloud for damage, it doesn't actually end up critting. So because of that, this whole concept of doing crits on my arrows just doesn't work. So let's go up to this boss right here and shoot some Gas Arrows, and I'll show you, right? We have a pretty high percent chance to crit. So right there we crit because we hit the boss, right? So that's when we hit the boss. Now let's put the Gas Arrow next to the boss on the ground and not hit it. So as you can see here, it basically never crits because it never hits the boss. But as soon as we hit the boss, right, there we go. Then we start getting the crits. And that's why Gas Arrow isn't the way that I want to build this build. And that's why I choose Poison Burst Arrow over it. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. But I think that about wraps up this video. Kind of a short and sweet one. The skill's not very complicated, but you know, let me know if you have any questions down in the description or the comments below. And as always, I will link a max roll /POB on the guide. I mean, this isn't really like a full guide. It's just kind of like a, initial kind of video talking about my progress. But yeah. All right, guys. If you want to show support for the channel, hit the sub button. And also, I stream every single night on twitch.tv/MisoXShiru starting at 10 p.m. PST. So I'd love to see you guys there. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. And here's a clip of a tier 15 map with Breach. All right. Peace.
Suffer. This will come in handy.